Hi guys, it's Josh again from Recovery Talks 24/7. I hope everyone's keeping well today. I just want to thank you once again just for everyone that's been following my podcast and people that have been listening to all the amazing shares that we've had so far. As you are fully aware that we are sponsored by an amazing company called Money Wellness. Now, Money Wellness, they support you with all of your debts. And if you have any struggles or if you're going through some sort of debt at the moment, then I would highly, highly recommend to get in contact with Money Wellness. They are a great, great company. They supported me through my journey of my debt and they managed to get me debt free. So it's a great company. Definitely give them a search. It's called Money Wellness. Now, today, guys, I've got an amazing guest with me. Now, this guest, her name is called Abbie. Now, Abbie and myself, we met on TikTok. I was watching some of her videos and I was like, yes. And the topic was about the doom and gloom of ketamine. And as people are aware, it's becoming such a common thing at the moment where there's a lot of people that are suffering with addiction with ketamine. And I don't think there's enough information out there, as me and Abbie have spoken. And I don't really want to take much more of, the airtime up. I want to just make it about Abbie. But for what we've spoken about, we both sort of agreed that there isn't much information. And I thought, you know what, Abbie, without me sharing and talking about it, because I have not got a clue about it, I thought, you know what, I'm going to ask her to come on, share her story of strength and hope. And she's built up the courage to come on today and to share her story. So whoever's going to be listening today, please do sit back and enjoy this podcast today, because I want you to hopefully take something from this and also be able to pass this on to maybe somebody that you know that is going through a struggle. So without further ado, Abbie, how are you doing today? You okay?
Hi, yes, I'm great, thank you. Grateful to have the opportunity to be given a platform to share a little bit about my experiences, and I'm looking forward to hopefully raising some awareness because, like you say, echoing everything you said, it's such a contemporary topic at the moment, and I think it's something that really needs to be spoken about a little bit more. So, yeah, thank you. I'm doing good.
Definitely. No, it's a pleasure. And I'm sure there's going to be people on here that are going to get a lot out of this today. So, Abbie, can you sort of take us back to your relationship with drugs? Where did it all begin for yourself? If you want to kind of start from the beginning, wherever you want to start, it's up to you.
Yeah, so my relationship with drugs and alcohol started quite young, sort of the age of 13, 14. I've always had quite an unhealthy relationship with drugs and alcohol. I think something that I've heard that seems to be quite common is we've sort of a lot of people started on smoking cannabis. So I smoked weed from about 14 to 16. But nothing was ever enough. The alcohol wasn't enough, the cannabis wasn't enough. And I was always sort of seeking a bit more of excitement, a bit more of escapism. There was a lot of trauma in my history as well. But I think that it was a mix between that and just like experimenting while you're young as well. But very quickly, I realised that the relationship I had with these substances was not a healthy thing for me. And that's a pattern that's sort of followed me throughout my life. I've had periods that have been worse than others. But yeah, I developed sort of a bit of the party girl persona as well. So it was quite easy for me to hide the fact that I was using these substances in unhealthy ways as well.
Yeah, no. And do you know what, Abby? I think everybody's story is different and everybody's story is powerful. And like you said, a lot of the time, the people that I speak to, and obviously including myself as well, because I'm in the journey of recovery myself. And a lot of us kind of start off with the party drugs or just smoking a bit of weed here and there, having a cheeky little joint. But we don't really realize that what sort of path it takes us down. So would you probably agree, like at the beginning, did you think that you was an addict, or was it just kind of like, do you know what, I'll just go with the flow, and then started expanding and looking at other things?
Do you know what? From a younger age, no, I didn't realise that I was an addict, and it's not until the last sort of few months, couple of years, that I've admitted that I am an addict. I have a problem. When I was younger, sort of 14 to 16, there was lots of service involvement, and I was with youth substance abuse services. But I was kind of in complete denial. I was very much rejecting what they were saying, that this was problematic in my life. However, I, looking back, can see how much it really did affect all of those areas of my life. My relationships with my family, my relationships with my friends. I was getting involved in some with some untoward people, putting myself in very vulnerable positions, being taken advantage of. I left school at a young age, and that sort of, I think, catalysed my abuse, because I was hanging around with people that were a lot older than me, and offering me drugs. I think a lot of the time for their gain. So looking back, being out of that situation and being able to reflect, there was definitely a problem. I just didn't see it until a lot later on in my life, probably 10 years down the line was when I realised there was an issue.
Yeah, and I'm guessing obviously at the beginning of your drug use as well. When did you sort of realize that things were really spiraling? Like when did you kind of have a realization of like, do you know what, Abbie, you're messed up here. Like what am I going to do? Like when did you realize that it was spiraling out of control for
I
yourself?
think the first time, because to clarify, there's been two stages of my life where I have been in active addiction and aware that I've been in active addiction. It was following a relationship that I had been in from the age of sort of 16 to 21 that was not a healthy relationship by any means. I ended that relationship and I suddenly had a lot more control and freedom over my life. And I began to use daily. And it was using daily and not going to work that I think I realised that this was a lot more of a problem than just recreational use. I was definitely using it to numb a lot of pain. It was a escapism, and I did reach out for help in that moment, and I was able to sort of change my life, rebuild areas of my life, like getting back into work, going to college, going to university. But what I didn't do was ever really take that recovery seriously. I thought I was sort of cured in a way, and I continued to use recreationally between that period of addiction and my recent relapse. I heard a quote a few months ago, and it was, "Are you really healed, or are you just not facing any triggers at the moment?" And I think that was really profound for me, because I thought I'd healed, I thought I'd cured this addiction, and I had control and could still use recreationally and maintain that sort of party girl persona and have fun with it. But actually, I was just not in a position. But things in my life were going well, and I didn't realise that I still there was still an addict inside me, and it wasn't until things sort of happened later on in life, I faced more issues that did then trigger me, that I saw this problem arise again and realised, actually, this time I need to really delve into this, and why is this a repeating pattern in my life?
And do you know what, Abbie? I think there's probably people that are listening to this as well, and I think it's the most hardest thing, I believe, from my own experience, and I'm sure you agree on this as well, Abbie, that to admit that you're an addict, I think is the most hardest thing for anybody to say, because I'm not too sure if you've kind of had this thought as well. When you hear the word addict, you walk the streets and you see the homeless person out on the streets, and the famous comment goes, "Look at that crackhead, look at that smackhead," and that's what you think, that's an addict. But you're a party girl, you're going out with the other friends, they're all getting on it as well, and you just think to yourself, do you know what? It's just having a bit of fun. And I think there's a lot of time for a lot of us, we don't realize how much of an effect it's having on us. And obviously we're going to get onto this later on,
Mm-hmm.
about what it really done to you and how much of a toll it took on you, your mental health, obviously your physical and your body as well, which is going to be really interesting to speak more about. But yeah, wouldn't you agree with that? Obviously, with the whole admitting you're an addict, I think that was the hardest thing probably for yourself to admit, right?
It was, yeah, and I'll touch on that a little bit later as well. But yeah, admitting that I was an addict was probably one of the hardest but most profound parts of my journey. I remember sitting a couple of years ago in my first, it was an NA meeting at the time, and I had to say, "Hi, my name's Abbie, and I am an addict." And I said that through gritted teeth, because I didn't really agree with it at the time. And it was after that meeting I reflected on that and thought, no, I am, because, like you say, you've got this stereotypical idea of what an addict looks like. And that's because that's, I think, that's what's visible to people in real life. People see people on the streets on these really hard drugs, and they picture that as what an addict is, what an addict looks like. But for me, it was very high functioning. It was being able to maintain a life. It's very easy to hide, and I think that's quite dangerous when it comes to talking about addiction, and people identifying as an addict, because it's very easy to be in denial when you're not matching that stereotypical picture of what an addict looks like. Absolutely.
Yeah. So obviously, let's kind of switch over to your current situation. So you've kind of touched on a little bit of, where kind of drugs have taken you. You're kind of on and off the scene at the moment at that time, and there's probably people sitting at home just going, like, pulling their hair out, going, do you know what, I'm exactly the same at this moment in time. I'm back and forth. The typical scenario would be you kind of get everything back. Maybe people get into a relationship, they get a great job, they may get the house, and everything's going good, and then the famous word comes along and it goes relapse. And I've been there many a times myself before, until we have to come to a realization that we need to take this recovery serious, and everybody has their own particular way of doing recovery, which I think is absolutely mint. So I'd really love to know, you've been on and off with substance use for about 12 years, right?
Yeah.
What does recovery look like for you today, Abbie?
For me today, it's still finding my feet with the sort of recovery that works for me. I've tried lots of different things in the past, different meetings, different groups. Today, it has been about that acceptance that we spoke about, accepting that I'm an addict and accepting that my entire life had to change. So for me at the moment, that has been about building a community, engaging with the recovery community in my area, and online as well. I've been attending SMART meetings, which I found absolutely incredible, and being able to relate to other people and just engage with people that understand. My friends and family are really supportive and they try to understand as much as possible. But I think being around people who have very similar experiences has been refreshing for me. It's given me a sense of my identity back, a bit of control, a bit of empowerment. I've currently just done a 2-week detox, which was funded for me, which I've been very grateful to experience. I am currently waiting on inpatient rehab. But for me, it's about commitment. It's about learning from this experience, and I'm not going to lie and say that I'm there yet completely. Lapses for me are a part of my ongoing recovery, but it's about learning from them, delving deeper into why these are happening, and understanding myself a little bit more. But yeah, it's really been about rebuilding my life again, finding a sense of hope, because a few months ago, I didn't see a way out of this. I didn't see how I was going to get to this recovery that I envisioned in the future. But now I'm taking control of that and rebuilding that and engaging with services. Yeah, definitely, that's been really important for me.
That's amazing, and that's really, really congratulations to yourself for doing that as well, because that takes a lot of courage, and I don't think there's a lot of people out there that understand us. People that are listening to this that that have been through what we've been through or going through it. We all get each other, don't we?
Yeah.
But people on the sort of the outside of our little clique, because we've all got our own little clique, haven't we? We're in recovery, we get each other, we understand one another, and we go to all these different sort of meetings, and it's such a refreshing thing to do, is to be around other people that go, do you know what, Abbie, I get you. Do you know what, Josh, I get you. And that's just such a powerful thing in itself. We're just like one big family, aren't we, in regards to recovery? And I think that's really, really important for anybody that's listening as well. Recovery, you're not by yourself. You have the choice to be by yourself, but do you know what? Take advantage, even just for listening to this today, just take advantage of it, because there is so many other people like yourself that are going through situations at the moment, or, are in recovery, and they've got so much knowledge and so many golden nuggets to give you. So keep sticking around, because it does work. It does work.
Absolutely.
So
Just to touch on that quickly, sorry.
yeah,
It is,
no,
like
go
you
on.
say, it's such a beautiful community, and I think people have preconceived ideas about what other people in recovery might look like. I was quite apprehensive, thinking that I wouldn't be able to relate to people. People might not, understand what I was going through. But there's so many. It's such a diverse community, and there is always people that understand what you're going through in very similar situations. And I've made some amazing friends through it. So yeah.
That's amazing. So in regards to when you was on that journey of quitting and you're lapsing, you're coming back, and you're learning from each one of them ones, which is amazing, because there's a lot of people that unfortunately that do go through relapses, and they're not, they never come back again. There's people that go through relapses and they just don't come back out of it, and they're just still in that addiction. What was the hardest part for you beyond now? So since quitting, what's been the hardest part for you beyond just quitting? What's been the struggle for yourself?
I think beyond quitting, it's been that acceptance and navigating how to rebuild my life, because the picture that I had of my life prior to committing to recovery was very different to what it was now. And I think that contributed to me spiraling a little bit, losing that sense of purpose, that direction that I thought I had. And it has been about navigating and figuring out how I'm going to rebuild my life, what that's going to look like, and just coming up with a bit of a plan about what works for me, really. And I'm still figuring that out, but I'm definitely getting there. But yeah, definitely the whole rebuilding of my life and coming to terms with the fact that I'm in a very different situation to what I thought I would be, and coming back from those lapses as well, trying not to fall into a full on relapse, because there's a difference between lapsing and relapsing. So it gets harder every time, but it's picking myself back up from that, becoming less challenging. But it's yeah.
Definitely. And I love that, just to kind of reiterate what you just said about picking yourself up. It's something that I really, really, encourage other people as well. Obviously, when you do laps, you just get yourself back up, you brush yourself off, and you keep running, and you keep going and running and running and running and keep going, running that race. And just, I used to envision, like, when I was like lapsing and then I got myself back up and I was running again, I just sort of envisioned that I had all my recovery family that are on my sideline, and they were like cheering me on, going, you can do it, like, you can do it. And like you said, it's okay. Anyone that's listening, if you have laps, it's okay. You can just get yourself back up and you can try again. And again, always just to remember, you're not alone. You are not alone in this whatsoever. It may feel like a lonely place right now. Maybe if you are listening to this and you're in your room by yourself and you're just feeling like, do you know what, I feel really lonely at this process at the moment. You're not. Just to really echo that to you guys, that you are not whatsoever. So we've kind of spoke about now the beginning part, which is I call the nitty gritty stuff, and how it all began for yourself. Again, you've just started doing the basics, smoking a bit of weed, doing a little bit of a party drug. You're kind of having a good time at that moment, not realizing where it's going to take you. But now I really want to speak on, which is the most important subject, because I've noticed, like I've spoke to you before, there's so many people out there that are suffering with this drug, and it's called ketamine. It's something that I don't have much knowledge on. It's something that I never struggled with myself. And from learning from yourself just briefly before we came on here, and also hearing online, even on the news as well, people are, really suffering with this. It damages your body. And I know from your stories on TikTok, and would love to get your name on your TikTok as well and get people to give you a follow on this. But I really want to kind of talk more about ketamine, Abbie. So ketamine, from what I know, it seems to me to be like a party drug, but it has some real serious effects. So how did this impact your physical health? Because from what I'm hearing on the TV, from what I'm hearing on TikTok, it really messes your body up.
Absolutely. Firstly, like you said, it's seen as a party drug, but interestingly, the way that it's used is changing. It's moved from sort of a party drug to people using it at home, a lot more isolated, and it's commonly thought of as quite a safe substance. It's one of the reasons I was taking it, because the stories that you hear in the media about other substances, for example, the ones with more acute and instant effects, risk of overdose, and things like that. With ketamine, the physical damage is a lot more. I like to use the term insidious. It happens quite silently, but it happens very rapidly as well. So while I was thinking that I was safe using this substance, as my tolerance began to build, I started to really see the physical effects of it and the physical impact it had on me. I mean, I consider myself quite lucky. I've struggled with my bladder, but not to the extent that sort of other people have. You hear these stories about people sniffing 14 grams of ketamine a day and getting their bladder removed. And I know a lot of people in that situation. For me personally, it was frequency. It was debilitating in the terms of I needed to be around a toilet constantly. There was a lot of pain, a lot of sort of UTI symptoms. But what I struggled with most was what's called K cramps. So this is a much less researched sort of phenomenon with ketamine, but it has a hugely damaging effect on your biliary system, so your liver, your gallbladder, and your digestive system. And for me, that was it led me to living in intense pain. I was spending a lot of the time sort of sleeping in the shower, screaming out in pain. It's an excruciating pain. It's been likened to sort of childbirth level pain, and we're not talking low level pain. And for me, it was chronic, and debilitating. I was bedridden. I couldn't leave my bed. I think I could just about walk to pick up. And I spiraled with that as well, because then I was using the ketamine to manage the pain that I was experiencing. My liver enzymes were becoming increasingly elevated, so my liver began to struggle. And I was very poorly with that. I lost a lot of weight. So my diet changed. I changed my diet completely to accommodate using ketamine. Um, so there were certain food groups that I would avoid, groups that are essential to live in, and I became very malnourished. I lost about 2 stone in weight. Yeah, very, very poorly. So whilst I was quite lucky with the bladder, I'm not going to say I didn't struggle with it. I was still going to the toilet at worst every sort of 10 minutes. I would be going 10 to 15 times in the few hours before going to bed. But the physical effects for me were really, really debilitating. Not only that, I've ruined my nose. I've got deviated septum. I've lost my sense of smell, and these are things that I'm still having to manage, even in the early recovery that I'm in. It's still things that I struggle with a lot.
Yeah. Wow. All I can say is wow to that, because you hear the obvious effects, don't you? You're like, oh, cocaine, what it does, it messes your nose up. You don't eat that much. There's not really been many cases that I know that it's affected your bladder or anything like that. And then obviously crack, heroin, everyone knows what that does. It's sort of a thing that you hear at school. You remember the talk to Frank. I don't know if it still does that today in schools, but it's the typical stuff. But like ketamine, this stuff just sounds absolutely nuts. And again, I'm gathering when you got to that situation where, you was malnourished, you said, you had to sort of change your dietary, for your body so you can intake more. What was it that when you was taking it, what was it doing for yourself? Was this just to get away from something that you were struggling in yourself? Or did it just sort of begin by, it was just a little party drug and you just gravitated to it more?
For me, it was both. It was a party drug, but it was also a sense of escapism from a lot of the things that I was going through in my life. Towards the end of it, you asked what I got out of it. Honestly, nothing. I was just trying to chase this feeling that I'd had in the past, and it wasn't giving me that. But it had become so ingrained in my life and my daily routine that that was just normal for me. And I was constantly just trying to get that sense of comfort back, and then to manage the pain as well. There was lots of different reasons for my use, and that's something that I'm still unpicking. But I think when I really realised that this was not sustainable was obviously the effects on my physical health, but also the fact that it wasn't doing what I wanted it to anymore. There wasn't any escape. I was fully confronted with the reality of the situation, and there was nowhere to run anymore because the ketamine wasn't giving it to me, and it just became completely unmanageable.
Yeah. So we've kind of heard obviously what it's doing to your body. Now, I'm guessing that this ketamine is going to do something to your mental health. I'm sure, just to kind of touch more on a little bit about that, of what, where did that take you with your mental health with ketamine? That must have really kind of dipped quick time.
Yeah, an extremely dark place. My mental health wasn't in a good place prior to my addiction. As I said, that was sort of one of the other reasons for using, as well as I was enjoying it for recreational use. It took me to a very dark place. It obviously exacerbated my mental health problems, towards what I like to call the end of my addiction and my sort of journey into early recovery. I was very serious about ending my life, and I was sort of making attempts. I was in touch with the crisis team. Like I say, I've been in and out of mental health services, the entire time, these sort of 12 years that I've been struggling with substances. So yeah, very dark place. I wasn't eating, I wasn't getting up. all the typical symptoms of sort of somebody who's struggling with their mental health. But I just didn't want to be here anymore, and I was starting to scare myself about sort of where this was taking me. Yeah, it had a massive impact on my mental well-being, and that's something that I'm having to pick the pieces up from. But again, that sort of, you get caught in this vicious cycle of the more you use, the more your mental health deteriorates, and the more your mental health deteriorates, the more you use, and it's just a cycle. And I was really struggling to find services that could help me with both of these problems at the same time, because there seems to be such a gap in service provision in the UK in terms of sort of co-occurring needs. So it's what's called a dual diagnosis. If you struggle from a mental health condition and a substance abuse problem at the same time, there isn't sort of the support out there to manage both of those things at the same time. So I was reaching out to substance abuse services and saying, look, I've got a problem with substances here, but I'm struggling with my mental health. And they were telling me, well, we can support you with the substance abuse, but we don't have the capacity to support with your mental health. So then I'm going to mental health services and being told they can't assess me because I'm using substances, so they can't tell what's my mental health and what's the drug use. And I was just at a complete loose end on how to manage these things together, because there just didn't seem to be that sort of comprehensive and integrated support. So, you know, my mental health kept getting worse and worse, but there was no support there because of my use. Yeah, it sort of left me feeling very, very alone, very isolated, and wondering how I was going to get out of this situation. And as I said, I was starting to see only one way out. I knew that if the drugs didn't kill me, if the ketamine didn't kill me, which it was on its way to doing, like I say, I was very poorly, my mental health was going to.
Yeah. And, you know, just to let listeners know as well, you know, if that is something that you are going through at the moment, you know, there is support out there. You know, there is an amazing service which is Samaritans as well. You know, they're a company that or a charity, sorry, that I've called on many occasions in my using times when I was in that dark place. You know, there is some fantastic services out there like Andy Man Club as well. That's really good for men. Smart Recovery, the 12-step program as well. Obviously can't mention every single one of them, but there is a lot of support out there. It's just the hardest thing is just picking up that phone and giving a call. But I tell you something, when you bypass that fear, the amount of relief that you get from making that call is amazing. But I just wanted to let anybody know that maybe listening that is going through anything like that at the moment.
Yeah, just to
So
reiterate that there is the support out there. You know, it's finding the right support that is available. But like you say, there is Samaritans, there's crisis helplines, and there's things that can keep you safe in the meantime. You know, it's not all doom and gloom. There is definitely support out there. It's just finding that.
definitely, yeah, definitely, 100%. And it's good to know as well, because there is great services out there, but also, there is some services out there that are really sort of failing people like myself, you, and people that may be listening that maybe feel like they've been failed. Totally understand that. And, I agree with it as well. There is some services that could be doing a lot better for people like us. Because unfortunately, there's people that don't get the right support, and they end up just being stuck in that, like you said, that cycle. And it is such a hard thing to jump out of. So getting into the whole rise of ketamine, I've noticed ketamine is especially among young people, let's say uni students. I'm sure that is on the rise there as well. So from your experience, what I would love to know, and maybe what the listeners may want to know as well, why do you think it's becoming so popular? What is it? What is it about ketamine that's so popular?
There's a few reasons. It's affordability. It's a very cheap substance in comparison with things like cocaine. It is very accessible. It's become increasingly accessible over the last sort of decade. Like, I started using when I was 16, and it was a lot harder to obtain back then. As the demand for it has risen, so has the availability of it. It's everywhere. So it's everywhere. It's cheap, but also there's a lack of a come down or sort of hangover. So it's a very easy drug to abuse. It's something that you can keep abusing and keep abusing. And as I said, that tolerance rises quite quickly. So it's easy to fall into a trap of using more and more. Yeah, it's just so available, and it has so many different uses. Like I say, people can use it. It was seen as a club drug, but now people are finding that they're using it sort of more house parties or just at home on a weeknight with their friend. As I said, because it's easy to abuse, it's something people seem to be using just on an evening, when they've got work the next day, because there isn't those leftover effects. It's just a very easy drug to abuse, and it's very easy to remain high functioning on in comparison with other substances. And again, it's still got that perception as a safe drug. So I think people seem to be choosing that over some of the other substances that have a little bit more of a negative stigma,
Yeah.
because there's still such a lack of awareness about it.
And like you said, there's a lack of awareness. There's not much sort of information that's kind of being shared, for the young people of what it does. Like I said, every other drug that I know, there is always something like a billboard outside, or there's something that, you hear about, oh, if you take that drug, this is what happens. But with ketamine, you don't really see that much. You don't really hear that much. So in regards to, let's say there is a group of young people that are listening to this podcast, they've just come across it. What is it do you think they need to know that they aren't being told, if they're listening to it right now and they're going, wow, what's this woman on about? It's a bit of fun. It's all right.
Yeah, and that is how it starts. I think, like you said, what's important to realise is the other drugs that have been around a lot longer and are a lot better studied. You hear about things like people overdosing after taking an ecstasy pill, or the effects that cocaine has on your nose and your heart and things like that. With ketamine, that awareness isn't there. I think what young people tend to see, what the media portrays as the dangers of ketamine, seems to be the very, very extreme cases. So, people who have been using very heavily for a long period of time and are losing their bladder. I think what young people aren't seeing, aren't being shown, is those effects that it can have even at lower doses, even with recreational use. This is a very damaging substance. Harm can happen very quickly within less than a year for some people. Everybody is different, but it's not just heavy and prolonged use that causes harm with ketamine. It can happen very quickly with recreational users. I think as well, with the demand increasing, the quality of ketamine has dropped dramatically. We're not seeing the same. That's what we're seeing on the streets now is not the same substance that we were taking 5 or 10 years ago. It's very heavily cut with the substances. Testing is unreliable. So there's lots of research chemicals and analogues of ketamine. So an analogue is a substance that's very closely related to ketamine. But what you're seeing on the readily available testing kits that people might use to test other things like MDMA or cocaine is that ketamine, the analogues and the research chemicals are still testing positive for ketamine. So you could have a batch of something, test it, and it'll tell you that it's ketamine, despite the fact that it's not, or there might be some ketamine present. But the testing out there for the substances that ketamine's commonly cut with aren't available readily. It's they're there, but they're things you might have to pay a lot of money for or send your samples off. I think people just need to know that no matter how informed we think we are, because I thought I was some sort of like ketamine connoisseur, and I knew what I was taking, I quickly realised that I have no idea what I'm putting in my body. And like we say, the long-term effects of ketamine are so understudied. When we think about the other things that it's being cut with, or the other substances that are being sold as ketamine, we have no idea what that's doing to our body either. So, no matter how much research you do and how educated you feel you are, it's an unregulated substance. You don't know what you're putting in your body, and I think it's being mindful of the damage that we could be doing to ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm guessing like the biggest risks that we're kind of hearing here, Abbie, is obviously it's affecting your bladder, and it's having an effect on the young people. I'm sure if there's young people that's listening to this right now, if you kind of think of the bigger picture, imagine having a bladder problem, from such a young age. That I reckon that's probably quite a big risk, to take, to have that effect for the rest of your life. So I'm guessing, Abbie, with that, you know, and some of the other side effects that you've had, like you said, also, you know, loss of smell. Is that a long-term thing? Is that something that now you are stuck with, Abbie, for the rest of your life? Or is there a way that it can get back to normal again?
This is very individual to every person, you know, their use, their body. Some of the things, for me personally, these are things that I hope in time I will recover from. There will probably be lasting impacts. I'm not sure my bladder will ever get back to sort of full capacity. But what I am seeing is that, you know, a lot of these effects are debilitating and they are disabling and they are irreversible. So I have a lot of friends and people that I've met through recovery who unfortunately will never recover from the harms of ketamine. And from a young age as well. So I was in touch with somebody recently, a young person reached out on TikTok, and they are 15 but had been using since sort of the age of 13, and they're seeing devastating effects on their bladder. You know, I know people whose bladders are recovering after a long period of abstinence, but I'm also seeing people who have been clean from the substance for say 17 months and are still spending 20 hours a day in their bath, waiting on bladder removal surgeries. You know, this it's for some people, you know, if you're not too far gone, there is a chance of making a full recovery. But on the other hand of it, it's a lottery. You know, there will be people that will deal with these effects for the rest of their life. As I said, having no bladder, having a urostomy bag or catheters. Yeah, it's a very debilitating and disabling drug.
Yeah. And yeah, like you said, obviously everybody's different, and you know, some people may suffer with it more, other people, you know, may not, and they may only have like minor you know, minor struggles that you may go through. But it's really interesting how you've portrayed this drug called ketamine. And I really appreciate you know, touching on a few things, and you just being very open and honest about how it's affected you, you know, being open and honest and going, yeah, do you know what? It affected me, my mental health. It's also affected my, you know, my bladder. You know, that's quite you know, very courageous thing to do. So I really do appreciate you, you know, sharing that. And I'm sure that people that may be listening at home going, oh my God, you know, she's just being honest. That's exactly what I'm going through at the moment. So jumping back to the whole system, and you know, really sort of there's sort of gaps in the support for this, because once again, you know, in regards to go and get the support, go and get the help, there is some few gaps, I'm sure, when it comes to ketamine as well, because there's not much information out there for these support services to go, do you know what, it's ketamine and this is what we can do and this is how we can support you. And we need more people like yourself, Abbie, and other people that may be listening to come together and go, nah, this is what it's about and this is how we need to support people and help people. So can you kind of share some of the struggles that you've seen or you've sort of faced in trying to get the right support? Kind of touch on that a little bit more for me.
Yeah, so as I said, there's such a lack of awareness about ketamine as a substance. Services are only in the last few years seeing such an exponential rise in people seeking treatment. What I have found personally, and I know this has been echoed through the experiences of other people, is that services just don't have the knowledge, and that's through no fault of their own. The research isn't out there, and that's leaving services quite ill-equipped to deal with people that are presenting with a ketamine addiction. Um, so things like harm reduction advice are still in the really early stages. Professionals aren't always um, too sure what advice to offer people. I've had conflicting harm reduction advice, some that has been quite dangerous. What I'm finding, especially about sort of seeking support from health professionals, going to the GPs or the urologists, um, this is something that is new to them and they're not quite sure how to deal with it. So you know, when I went to the doctors and I'm saying I have a ketamine addiction, this is the symptoms that I'm experiencing in my body, this is what is happening. They just had no idea that this was a thing. And I'm having to sort of, through my own research and the things that I've learned through, you know, online on the recovery through research articles, tell health professionals what's happening in my body, which left me in quite a hopeless place thinking, how am I going to get the right support if professionals don't even know what I'm sort of facing? And I think that's one of the dangers about this lack of awareness, is that it can be quite difficult for professionals to sort of get it right and know how to manage the health problems as well. Like we said, the bladder issues are quite well established. There's been a lot more research on things like that, but yeah, there's a lot of work to be done, and I think that's why it's so important that people are speaking out and raising awareness, because it's only with the people that are going through this personally that we can start sort of drawing attention to that, and hopefully start seeing a greater push from services professionals and those undertaking research into the substance, so that hopefully in the coming months and years, people will start being able to get the right support and accurate advice on how to manage this and support their recovery.
And that's what it's about, isn't it? Getting people together and getting the message out there. This is what it's about. It's the community getting together and banging their heads together, going, right, we need to get the message out there so that more and more people can hear, like, this is what it does. And that's really sad as well, that, imagine that, going to the doctors, and you're going to a doctor expecting that they're going to understand you, and they're kind of like, that must have been quite a daunting experience for you as well, because you're kind of
Absolutely.
going there to get help, aren't you?
I've seen it a lot with people suffering from the extreme and chronic pain that you get with ketamine as well, being too scared to go to A&E, because when they have presented to sort of A&E in the past, um, they didn't know what to do with it. They didn't know how to support people to manage this pain. So it's becoming a barrier to people accessing support. And I think that's really dangerous. I think what is important is that if people are struggling with this pain, should not be put off by this lack of awareness, because the more people that present, and I mean for their own health, it is absolutely important to get checked out, but also to bring this problem to the forefront to people's attention. It's a barrier to people seeking help, and it's putting sort of people's lives and health at risk as well.
Yeah, definitely. So if you could send a message, obviously maybe somebody that may be in the professional field and they may be listening to this and they're kind of like, oh wow, if you could send a message to professionals in the field, whether they're mental health workers, addiction counselors, or policy makers, what would it be? What message would you want to say to them right now if they're sitting there listening to you?
Take this seriously, because it is an epidemic. We are in a ketamine crisis right now, and it's affecting young people, the younger generations who may be seeing these debilitating effects for the rest of their life. It's about working together. It's about collaboration. I think services really need to pull together, whether that's substance abuse services, mental health services, health professionals. Everyone needs to start communicating. They need to start listening to the people that are experiencing this, picking up on that lived experience, and using that to sort of build a bit more of a plan about how this is going to be managed, because this is reaching. I'm hoping it's reaching its peak right now with the rising cases and things like that. But what we are going to start seeing is the fallout of this in years to come, and we're going to start seeing the health implications. The young people who will, what I didn't touch on before, obviously you've got the health issues, but that's affecting people engaging in employment, in education, in fulfilling relationships, and we'll be seeing mental health deteriorate. It's something that really needs to be taken seriously now, so we can get people communicating, get people collaborating, and figure out how we are going to deal with this crisis and the leftover effects, the downstream effects in years to come.
Awesome. That is a very good message. I like that. So we're coming to the end now. Obviously you've shared openly about what you've gone through. You've kind of touched on, well, not kind of, you've touched on, ketamine itself. You touched on more about your mental health as well and where it brought you, which it brought you to your knees, and now you're doing something about it. And that's just such an amazing thing. And it just shows that if you want it, you can have it. You made that decision. Yes, you relapsed. Yes, you went back sometimes, but you still got yourself back up. You still stood there and said, right, I need to sort this out. I can't go on anymore. And that's a great message in itself to anybody that's listening, that it is possible. It is really, really possible. No matter how old you are, no matter where you're from, you know, who you're surrounded by, it's possible. And that's just a beautiful message in itself. And you can sit here today and you can say, do you know what, I'm clean. Even I truly believe, and I always say this in all of my podcasts anyway, even if you just get 1 hour clean, that's flipping amazing and that's mint. Because me and you both know, Abbie, it's not easy out there and it's hard, you know, but if you just get that 1 hour clean, or if you just go to bed tonight without using, that is fucking amazing. And I'm proud of every single person out there that's doing that right now. So looking back at your journey, what's something that you've learned about yourself that you've never expected that you would have learned before?
I have, do you know, that I enjoy the simple things in life. I thought I was going to live this really hedonistic, fun-filled lifestyle for the rest of my life, and the only way that I could do that was through these raves and these parties and all of these big things. I've really learned that I'm enjoying just living. I am. It's given me such a different outlook on life, and I'm just so grateful to be alive. I'm grateful for the relationships that I've got. I'm excited to build a life that I never envisioned for myself. I've learned that I can change. There's a person underneath there that was always trying to come out, and what recovery has given me is the opportunity to be that person and experience what life is like on the other side. And it's exciting. At first, that was something that was very daunting for me, but yeah, absolutely, just this whole new life that I'm building, and it's so much more beautiful than what I was experiencing before.
And that's amazing how you put it. It's just the simplest of things now that we're like, wow, you know. For me, it was going out for a long walk and enjoying nature. Now, I'm not a nature person. I'm a city boy. I'm just like, you know, if I'm going somewhere, I'm going. But now, you know, I can go out for a nice long walk and actually enjoy it. And I really love it, you know, and it's the simplest of things as well. You know, you get your feelings and your emotions back, and sometimes they can be a bit daunting. It's a great thing you get them back, but also it's a daunting thing when you get them back, because you end up crying at some crazy stuff. Because I'm a crier all the time. You know, I watch particular things and I'm like, I never cried at that before, but I'm crying about that today. And that's a good thing. You know, you get your emotions back. You're getting to know who you are and who you was meant to be. And it's just been buried for, you know, over so many years. But you're now on this journey where you're unburying yourself and you're finding who you are. And even though it has been, you know, a tricky journey, even though, yes, you went back and you came back again, you're finding yourself. And that's just such a beautiful thing, especially if anybody's listening as well. You know, the journey that if you want to decide to take this journey on and go and start the journey of recovery, it's the best thing that you will ever do. It
It
really,
is,
really is.
and it's hard, like you say. There's a saying, and it's the best thing about recovery is that you get your emotions back, and the worst thing is that you get your emotions back, and that can be quite difficult in early recovery. But that's what it means to be human. We will experience ups and downs in life, and there is ways that we can cope with that without escaping through substances. Yeah, there's a lot of hope, and I think my message to people that might be struggling right now is that there is the help out there. You know, reach out, speak to people. There is no shame. It's a difficult thing to reach out for help, but I think once you cross that bridge, you get over that hurdle of that sort of difficulty of sharing your story and opening up to people. Beautiful things happen on the other side, and they start happening quickly. You know, once you've got a bit of clean time under you, just good things start coming. It's fantastic.
Awesome, Abbie. So finally, what's your sort of next for you now in your recovery and your personal journey? I know you said you touched on it a little bit of what you're going to be doing, but I'd like you to kind of let us know again, like what's your next steps?
Yeah, so like I say, I am going into inpatient rehab to sort of work a little bit more on delving deeper into sort of some of the issues that I've got to try and prevent me from, to put me in a more stable position for what might arise in the future. But I am wanting to eventually start working in substance recovery and harm reduction. I'm starting to engage in some volunteering. I've been in touch with different services. Yeah, I think my future will be a lot about sort of raising awareness, supporting other people in recovery, and just seeing where life takes me, and having that power and control back. And just committing, keeping going to the meetings, and I think it's important to not get complacent as well. Recovery is a lifelong commitment. It's something that we have to work at every day, like you say, whether that's hour by hour, minute by minute. It's something that, yeah, something that we've
That's
got to
amazing.
commit to, but it's exciting.
That is mint. And do you know what? You've got so many great goals that are so achievable, so achievable. And to even build up that courage as well to go into an inpatient rehab is amazing, and I really congratulate you on that as well. And it's okay, just to let people know, you can do like what you've done, you've done your own sort of personal detox and you've come this far, but also you're going, do you know what? I kind of need that extra support, and that's all right. That is okay. That doesn't make you less of a woman or less of a man, to just go, do you know what? I need that little bit of extra help, and that's all right. And you're going to get some great therapy, I'm sure, in this place you're going to. You're going to be surrounded by some amazing people that are on exactly the same journey as you, and you're just going to come out and do some mint stuff. So I can't wait to stay in touch with you and hear how it is all gone for yourself, and then hopefully maybe if you wanted to, because you probably are going to be so busy with supporting and helping other people out, but to kind of get like an update of how you've been and what's been going on for you. But Abbie, as we come to a close, where can people find you? So whoever's listening, where can people find you on TikTok? What's your TikTok name?
So yeah, on TikTok it's tranquil, not tranquilized. I will, if you could just put a little tag at the end of the video so people know where to find me. But yeah, I'm active primarily on TikTok with it's at tranquil, not tranquilized.
Awesome. And I know you've got some amazing content on there. I always will encourage you to keep doing it. But Abbie, thank you so much for giving up your time tonight to come on and do your share. It was absolutely amazing. Loads of information there. I got a lot from that tonight. And I'm sure there's people at home that have been listening and really have a better understanding, or they just have been blown away by your story. And I'm sure they have. But Abbie, once again, thank you so much and have a lovely rest of your evening. All right.
Not a problem. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Josh.
Cheers.
Take care.